Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combeluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Blackwolf Copper and Gold, which is a mineral exploration and development company focused on precious and base metals projects located in Alaska and British Columbia. Blackwolf is advancing its hydro properties in the Golden Triangle in Alaska and British Columbia. This morning, it announced initial bonanza gold grade intercepts from the Swan Zone at its Harry project in BC. As well, it also has 100% interest in the advanced exploration stage Niblack project located on the Prince of Wales Island in southeast Alaska that hosts an initial resource estimate comprising 5.6 million tons of indicated and 3.4 million tons of inferred copper, gold, zinc, and silver resources. Today, I have with me on the webinar Morgan Lekstrom, who's the Chief Executive Officer and Director at Blackwolf. Good to have you with us, Morgan.
Yeah, thanks for having me with me again.
So today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Morgan's going to provide a quick overview of the company, and then we'll dive right into today's exciting news. And then in the second part, we'll take your questions live in a Q&A session. So please send your questions in using the chat, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. I'll note that you can type in those questions at any point throughout today's webinar. To start, we'll handle the disclosures and then get into the overview by Morgan. So for Blackwolf Copper and Gold, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Blackwolf Copper corporate presentation, located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Blackwolf specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Morgan to go over today's news for Blackwolf with you.
Thanks, Taylor. I think the only thing missing was this call is being recorded for quality assurance and training purposes, but good disclosure there. I appreciate that. Let's get to the start of this presentation, apparently. And I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Blackwolf. And what we're going to talk about today is I'll give a quick overview of the company. I don't want to do a deck flip because I know everyone here, it's a working day and are on a limited time frame. So let's talk about the big points of Blackwolf. And oh, my presentation just failed. What just happened? Uh-oh, there we go. Got it back. Perfect. The big points about Blackwolf and why it's positioned in this, what we think is an upcoming bull market, to be one of the leading companies in the Golden Triangle, in BC, in Southeast Alaska, and generally in the market. Let's start with our three pillars. So Blackwolf is a company that's been around for 5 to 6 years in its different iterations, but in its current one, we have 3 main projects and we have 3 main pillars. And the pillars are strategic investor, leadership, and rocks. And everyone asks me about rocks. Why don't we call it value? Because I think the value is all 3 of them together. And that's really what we're looking at here. So let's start with our strategic investor, being Frank Justra. He just did a re-up on his position, showed a lot more support for Blackwolf. We just raised $3.3 million, oversubscribed, over market price, where he wrote a significant check into that as well. Frank is a huge supporter of our company, and through obviously on market buying and through his participation in private placements has really shown his belief in what the vision for Blackwolf is that Rob McLeod had put together, and being that leader in the Golden Triangle. So let's go to our leadership and we'll talk about rocks last. Andy Bowering, it does say incoming, but the new slide deck says current director. Just joined our board, came in through an acquisition called Optimum Ventures. We acquired that company in September, it closed in September. And through doing that, we brought in something called the Harry Project. And this is the one we're really excited about for today's press release. And we'll talk about, we're obviously still very excited about our other projects, but this one today for us is the one we're looking at. And then Rob McLeod. So between Andy Bowering's experience up in the Golden Triangle, and with other companies like Building American Lithium, Prime Mining, and then complemented with Rob McLeod and his background in the Golden Triangle, have worked together before, and then Rob being a 3rd generation geologist and miner from Stewart, from the heart of the Golden Triangle, there's a ton of legacy knowledge there that not many people have access to, right? It's a very complex geology up there. And really having someone with his pedigree and with his family's pedigree up there puts us in a position to make big discoveries, which we will talk about today. So let's talk quickly about rocks. This will be the comprehensive overview of the company. And then we'll get into our press release. And then I'll let everyone ask me questions, and then we can go about the rest of our day. Let's talk about our main project called Niblack. So Niblack is a 6 million ton VMS deposit. It's high-grade copper, gold, zinc, and silver. This is on the Prince of Wales Island. It has always been thought to be limited on size until Rob and another young geologist did his PhD. They spent a bunch of time up there and figured out that the geology is actually overturned. So now it went from a 6 million ton VMS that thought was cut off, had been kind of looked over, to a very exciting project that in 2020 and 2021 we drilled. We had fantastic grades and widths, 44 meters of 2% copper with 2.89 grams gold, zinc in there, silver in there, another 77 meter hit. So this thing has room, a ton of room to grow, and that's a mining joke, a ton of room. But also it has tidewater, it has a port right there, given that you can land. It has an existing underground infrastructure in place. So Niblack is this fundamental anchor for us at Blackwolf. We have this deposit, we have a project that's expandable, but we're also very, very much looking forward to how do we grow the company, not just on the resource side, but on the exploration side. And that comes into Cantu and our property, Harry, which we just purchased. So Cantu Mountain is on the Alaska side of the Golden Triangle. And it's kind of a story I really like to go through, because it's one of the ones that really got me into the company. And it's based on this big treasure map you have right here. This is truly one of those 1920s treasure map that was given to Rob McLeod. They said, go look at Cantu Mountain, look at that back side of Cantu where glaciers had receded, no work has been done. And that led us to not only running a drill campaign, but high grade samples, seeing outcropping veins, outcropping in the backcountry. So this area is on the southeast side of Alaska as well, or sorry, in Alaska, but on the Golden Triangle side, never been touched. When you hear Golden Triangle, you mainly hear BC, but we're on the Alaska side. So drilling results are still waiting for those to come in. We used a different lab for the hairy ones, and you'll probably see why, just mainly because of the speed of the lab. Each lab runs a different speed, and they have different capabilities on that. So this is not only exciting to get into an area that is kind of like Indiana Jones, you know, lost treasure hunt. We're looking for something big there, but never been drilled, and just outside Stewart. This is Rob's home territory. This is where the expertise of the McLeod family can shine. And let's go to Harry, and let's go to our drill results, because as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about what we saw there and our results and our visible gold that we hit. So we told the market a little bit of time ago that we'd hit visible gold. This is the picture I really wanted to show everybody. This is what we drilled. This was the first intercept of what we drilled on our 6th hole at the Harry project. We did rush this hole. And we've only rushed a certain portion of it. We rushed the visible gold portion and an up and then a lower 60 meter portion because it looked good. It didn't have visible gold, but boy, did it run wild. 312 grams gold over a meter and 277, not 227. My fingers were typing too fast this morning. Over a meter, and these are 60 meters apart. This is very analogous to how Bruce Jack was built. It was built on 1 meter high grade intercepts. They bulk mine it, and they come at it and they average the grade over a distance. Over 8, 10, 15 meters, still very high grade, but bulk mineable. This is just the first step in this discovery. It was a significant step out from the drill results they had in the past, which were 1,400 grams silver equivalent over 15 meters and 9.26 grams. Or 9.26 meters of 1,833 grams silver equivalent. So this shows there's a bigger system there. And with Rob's expertise, he was able to come out onto site, vector in with our geologists on this high grade, and then drill it. So we're waiting on the rest of the drill results. Obviously, this is something we really wanted to get to the market. We wanted to show hey, we're onto something here. We're not only excited about it, but we're planning our next campaign as we speak. We're using all the geological knowledge we're getting, and seeing visible gold like this. I mean, I looked at that and I said, no, can I make a band for it or something? It's very visceral to see it and see it in person. This is truly a monumentous occasion for that area. And given its location right between Ascot, who's going back into production, and Scotty Gold, who was a past producing mine, have had fantastic results as well. I think we're what we call the missing link in the Golden Triangle. I'm hoping this is one of the catalysts for big M&A in the area. When you see people like Ascot going back into production and us being on the direct back side of them, this just shows that system continued, and it continued in a fantastic way. Obviously, this is what I want to talk about. This was mainly what I want to talk about. I wanted to open it up to Q&A because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, and I wanted to give the highlights of Blackwolf. So I'm the president CEO. I don't like talking about my background, but my background is mine building. I spent most of my time working in and out of Canada and overseas. I worked for Freeport in Indonesia, Oyu Tolgoi in Mongolia, Rio. I put mine into production in Africa. So, and then a couple other mines in Canada. So really, we liked seeing this. This is how we think about it. We look at Niblack where it's at. We look at Harry where it's at, and Cantu, and how does that tie together in a much bigger picture? How does that form maybe a district size gold system like you see between Premier and Ascot, now us tying it together? So I'd like to open it up to questions, and thank you very much. I know that was quick.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Morgan. Right into it. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So with that said, we've got a few that have come in already. Maybe first, you talked a little bit about Frank Giustra and him re-upping. Have these results started to attract new institutional interest as well?
Yeah, we've definitely had a lot of institutional calls. Our last financing was very, very tight. It was not with a lot of people. So, excuse me. So I would say there's some strong institutional interest in us right now, but I guess we'll see where that goes from here.
Perfect. Okay. And then in terms of the drilling that was done this season that led to these results, we have somebody wondering in terms of the planning for that, and how, like obviously you mentioned, Rob's expertise in the region, and able to contribute and say that this is where we want to drill. Are you, I guess, was part of that drilling rushed at all, or is that very deliberate in terms of how you drilled at the Swan Zone?
No, so it was sequential drilling. So it's from hole 1 all the way out to hole 7. And what we saw in hole 6, we said, well, hold on, we definitely need to rush this. It was very visual. It made it easy to say this is a definite portion we'll rush. And the rest of the results are coming over the next number of weeks here. We expect the rest of November to be fairly exciting for us on the results side of it.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I think we had a question on that as well. Just wondering when next assays would be out, so that good look for things to come over November is essentially the message there. Yeah. Okay. Another question, just in terms of state of the market here. Just given markets aren't appreciating good results, would it make more sense to sit on cash right now?
Well, I think we're in a pretty strong cash position. I mean, we just raised and closed on $3.28 million. We had a strong cash position before that, sits us around $6.5 to $7 million in the bank. We're definitely in a position to execute on our programs next year. We're in a position to not only on Harry, follow up on Cantu, potentially on Niblack here in short order. So we are in a very strong position with having a backer like Frank, and having access to our capital network through Rob and our entire team. I think we're in a good position to start creating significant shareholder value like we've seen today with the results. Although the stock has gone down, these sometimes are liquidity options for people. Like, hey, I've been beat up on other stocks. This one's having a lot of positive results. Let's get some cash flow out of that. Now, what I encourage people to encourage them to look at is, hey, what kind of results are these? How do they compare to others in the industry? And are these, the 10th set of results? No, they are our first sets of results that are coming out. So we're very hopeful that the rest are going to be as good, or, give us a lot more geological understanding of the area. So getting very exciting for us.
Right. So in terms of the holes that were drilled this season, how many were drilled at the Swan Zone itself?
So we didn't actually know how far the Swan Zone went. We had done a step out of a couple hundred meters, and we started to drill it, and we kept intersecting the Swan Zone, as you've seen with the visible gold. So we drilled 7 holes. Our original budget was to do between 800 and 900 meters, just to do a light test there. We wanted to see what we just purchased, and we doubled that. We came in significantly under budget as well, and a true testament to the team and the knowledge of that area on how to drill and how to do it efficiently. So the Swan Zone keeps going. We haven't found the end of it yet, and that's just one zone on this property where on surface we've identified what looks like multiple.
Right, and did you do drilling at other zones as well on the Harry project this season, or is this also Swan Zone this year?
Yeah, we haven't touched any of the other zones yet. There's a lot of potential on the property, given that we've identified multiple drill targets that are outside the Swan Zone. So hey, you're on the backside of Premier, which was the highest grade producer in North America for years. You're down the road from Brucejack. I think from a vectoring standpoint, we're sitting in a pretty good position to continue to make discoveries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and already, given the results from today, and with lots more to come from the Swan Zone, I mean, it is, what you got today enough to kind of start looking at a follow-up program for next season?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's enough to go off of to not only have a follow-up program, but to look at how we're going to expand on the Harry property to those other targets we've spoken about. Again, we're sitting in a strong cash position. We definitely have the benefit of that. That gives us the ability to go out and hit this very hard right in the spring.
Great. Okay. So I know also in the press release today, you mentioned the assays for Cantu are pending. We just have a question from the audience here wondering what the difference is between Cantu and Harry.
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't explain that well enough. So the Cantu project is on the Alaska side of the Golden Triangle. There's a road, the Grand Duke Road, that goes through right up the U.S.-Canada border. And that's where on the left-hand side, we have our Cantu property on Cantu Mountain. And you keep going up further. And then on the BC side, we have the Harry project, which is sandwiched between Ascot and Scotty. So 2 different jurisdictions, very few kilometers apart.
Okay. And then in terms, I don't want to get too technical here, but, I guess what's is there a simple way to kind of explain the geological or system relationship between those 2 assets and the Premier mineral system and potential linkages there?
I think we like to explain it more like the Brucejack system, in the sense that, and I'm not a geologist, I'll preface this with, Rob explained it to me, it looks more like a ladder system. So when you had high-grade gold, little gold halo, high-grade gold, and then you have distance in between them. So it kind of creates these high-grade ladders coming through. And just like Brucejack, they were small intervals, not small, but high-grade, a meter, sometimes 2 to 5, 10 meters, depending on the grade depth. But as they got smaller in meterage, they got higher grade, and that's what they go after. These ladders of gold and the gold halo around them, they average them out. And I think, don't quote me, but I think it's about 8.5 grams, the average grade of Brucejack right now. But they've had intercepts like this. So that's exactly what they're chasing. So the analogy there is that, given the high-grade nature of Premier and how they mined it back in the day, and how Brucejack's being mined, and the trend that we're on, the structural trend that goes all the way up into Scotty, we are intersecting what we believe was the receding of the glaciers coming down and opening up these brand new areas.
Right. And then in terms of, you mentioned there the structural geological corridor extending kind of north-south, along which the Harry project's on. And then you have Cantu, which is, I believe, to the west across the valley from Premier. So it's a much closer in terms of proximity, I guess, and part of that could be part of that same system. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, you're situated directly across from infrastructure, which is one of the toughest things in the mining space when you look at the longer term future of a mine. You know, how do we build it? What kind of power is needed? Water, roads. We are right there. Like the Ascot Mill is right behind us on the Harry side. When you look across from Cantu Mountain, it's, I don't know, a kilometer. I used to think it's about 600 meters, but that's to the property edge. It's about a kilometer and a half to the infrastructure. So you have that infrastructure there on both sides. There's an advantage to that for both properties.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So we have some questions here, kind of along the same lines here. Just in terms of how do different seasons affect your drilling, or what's the forecast, I guess, or typical drilling season maybe is the question.
You know, it's a very heavy snow load area, so it's really snow dependent. Lots of times on Harry, we can probably get in May to June. On Cantu, it could be June to July, and those can go until late October. As we see now, you know, when we shut the drilling down on Harry, it actually started to snow where we were. So being that we have to be conservative here, we had to shut down, pull the drill just in case it really started snowing and we didn't want to rent a drill for a whole year, versus where you sometimes have these years where you have a longer access season. So it is weather dependent, but we do have a good 4 to 5 month window. I'd say 4 months between May and October, 4 to 5 months there that we can drill. And there are ways to do it in the winter, but it's not ideal. It's very expensive. It gets very cold and very, you know, it's blustery up there, as they would say. But you don't need a whole lot of drilling to hit. Well, sometimes you need a lot of drilling to hit a discovery. Sometimes you don't need a whole lot of drilling to hit a discovery. And I think we just proved that on our 6th hole we hit a discovery. So we're feeling very lucky. As you would say, the mining gods were smiling on us.
Yeah, perfect. And then in terms of, you know, just I guess wondering about the dynamics of having projects on both sides of the border, and how you manage that, you know, maybe positives or negatives, and kind of what the overall view is of that.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska is one of the premier jurisdictions, just like BC, to work in. You know, they're very friendly on the mining side, very positive towards building mines. You've seen that with Pogo, you've seen that with a lot of other mines around the area, up in different parts of Alaska. So I'd say being in the Alaska side isn't overly complicated in that sense. You just use different contractors, different helicopters, that kind of stuff due to international boundaries. But being in the BC side also has an advantage to using flow through. So, you know, using flow through financings that create a less dilution, but still having a main project in the Alaska side that already has a resource on it that we don't have to dilute to get is a pretty positive for us. So I look at Alaska as you know, I like calling it the final frontier. I'm a bit of a Star Trek nerd. So it's kind of one of these final frontiers where a lot of people go, I'd rather be in Nevada, it's warm. And then you find these high grade gold and copper and nickel projects all over Alaska. And now people are kind of starting to queue in. So I think it's a positive to be in both locations, especially with Harry and Cantu being so close to each other. Geology transcends borders.
Yep, very true. Okay, I think we're through most of the questions that are here, and I've thrown in a couple myself. So maybe I'll just give the audience a last call for questions, and I'll let you kind of give the final wrap up and pitch while we wait for any stragglers in terms of questions.
Sure. So I can sit here and be quiet then? No, you know, the fun thing about being in a market like this and being in a company like Blackwolf that's making discoveries, that has not only amazing shareholder support through Frank and through our current and new shareholders coming in, but also having that technical team with Rob McLeod and his expertise in the area, having the backing and knowledge of Andy Bowering, who sold companies in that area. This positions us to be the premier company, premier go-to company to make discoveries, to lead the area, and what I see is being a part of a bigger play in that district, with between Ascot, Scotty, us, Newmont surrounding us, Newmont just buying Bruce Jack through Newcrest. There's a lot of a lot of positives to where we're at. And I think the market will see that once we have a bit of a change in sentiment, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep making those discoveries. So.
Excellent. All right. So I don't see any other questions that have come in, so I think we'll leave it there. So I would like to thank Morgan from Blackwolf Copper and Gold for taking the time today to host the webinar with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you for everybody on the line for tuning in with us today.
Thanks a lot, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. My direct number is on our press releases, and I love answering calls.